Welcome back to Propelio TV, everyone. I am TJ Kosen. My beautiful co-host over on my right is Kelly Smith. You're watching Pain and Gains. We have a great guest today. John Park does IRAs and retirement accounts. We're going to teach you guys or talk to you guys about how to get to the sandy beach of retirement with your toes in the sand and a Mai Tai with an umbrella in it. So let's hear a couple things about Propelio, and we'll be right back with our pro tip.
Propelio TV is sponsored by Noble Mortgage and Investments, Batch Skip Tracing, Think Multifamily, CreativeCashflow.com, and Life and Air.
Want to keep up with the latest Propelio TV daily? Be sure to subscribe and click that bell.
Take it. All right, welcome back, guys. So, like we said before the little intro, we are a Pain and Gains show, the best show on Propelio TV in this time slot, in our unbiased opinion. And myself, Kelly, and John here, we're going to talk about how to save you guys money on your taxes, and we're going to make it actually really exciting, because this is an exciting topic. Kelly.
Well, everybody, as being self-employed and real estate investors or entrepreneurs, everyone's always talking about retirement, trying to build wealth, and self-directed IRAs are the #1 thing that people talk about. But there are benefits to another program that I was unaware of until recently called Solo Ks, which are 401ks, and which is how I met John, and you also met John. So I guess let's jump right in. We're pains and gains. So the pains of being an entrepreneur and self-employed is you don't have a company that is giving you a retirement account. So we are our own retirement accounts. So John, everyone talks about IRAs and 401ks. As entrepreneurs, when is it beneficial to have an IRA versus a 401k?
You bet. So let's take the legal part of it first. If somebody has a Roth IRA funds are, generally speaking, the only funds that cannot be brought into a 401k. So if I'm talking to a prospective client and they're saying, hey, I want to set up a solo 401k plan for my business, but I want to roll over Roth IRA funds, we can still set up the solo 401k. We just can't roll over those Roth IRA funds because it's just presently not permitted. But other than that, and I'm going to be very blunt with this, and you know how I talk, Kelly, if someone qualifies for a solo 401k plan, meaning they have a business, whether that business is full-time or part-time, whether it is a sole proprietorship, whether it is an LLC passing through back to the person as a sole proprietor, whether it is an S Corp or a C Corp, almost in all cases, a solo 401k plan is going to be much better than any IRA plan, period.
And some of the reasons is, well, custodians or third parties managing your accounts, we discussed. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You bet. So under the law, an IRA, it has nothing to do with self-direction. It's just what the law is for IRAs. IRAs have to be held through custodians. So we all kind of know that, but it's kind of one of those hidden things that we don't even really think about. So if I have an IRA account at one of the large national brokerage firms, they are still reporting the annual value of my IRA to the IRS each year. I'm not even necessarily aware that they're doing that, but they are doing that. But that's a snapshot of my account in my IRA on 12/31, basically tied up with mutual funds, etc. When it comes to a self-directed plan, we still have to work through an IRA. But a lot of the large national brokerage firms don't sponsor self-directed IRA accounts simply because they're not making any money doing those types of accounts. They're not selling things like mutual funds to people. So who do we use? We just have to use custodians that are still IRS approved custodians. They are FDIC insured, but the only purpose that they're serving and the only fees that they charge for is just strictly serving as the custodian for the IRA, so that we're meeting the legal parameters for the law for IRAs.
Interesting.
But with the 401k, the account can be set up at a local bank. We work with national brokerage firms on the 401k side, such as Schwab, Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, E-Trade. There are some others out there. But bottom line is we can actually set up the solo case. So if a person has a preference to having it opened at a local bank, just because that's what they want, for whatever reasons they want that, we can. If they're wanting it at one of those brokerage firms, we can set it up there as well.
So you're mentioning like the perk is you could go to a bank. So another positive would be check writing abilities.
Yep, absolutely. So with both, you'll have check writing capabilities. And what most people don't understand is if, they called one of those companies I just mentioned, if you called them directly and just said, hey, I want to set up an individual 401k plan, they're going to be very, very happy to help you. And they're not even charging you fees. But here's the difference. And you guys already know this. When you just call them directly and open up one of these accounts, you don't get checkbook control. You can't invest in non-traditional assets, whether it's hard money loans, real estate, etc. So what's the difference? How are we doing it so it is being set up that where you have that option? We're setting it up so that those companies understand that the client is working with a third party, such as like my company, PGI Agency, and that plan is being set up under the documents that PGI is creating for our client, which allows them to do anything and everything up to what the IRS does not prohibit a 401k plan from doing.
Okay.
So talk to us a little bit about, because this was huge, I know, when we set up my dad's account, and I know it was huge for you when you were setting up your account. Talk to us a little bit more about the difference about the funds being in the IRA company's account, where they're the custodian and they basically have the money in their account, versus this case where the money's actually in the 401k account that you own that has your name on it, where you then have the checkbook control. So the big issue that a lot of folks can have sometimes when dealing with a self-directed IRA account is you got to call up the self-directed IRA company, wait in their telephone line, press 1 for English, and then maybe in 3 days get a check issued for your hard money loan draw or whatever it is that you're funding out of the thing. So there's a lot more kind of layers of headache-ness that you got to go through. Whereas what you set up, for us is a lot more streamlined, just a lot more efficient.
Well, you could go to Wells Fargo and open up a bank account, and it's now your 401k.
That's exactly what we did.
Which is genius.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bottom line is you're going to have the efficiency from the saving of the time, because as Kelly just mentioned, you have that account. It's whether it's at that local bank or whether it's at one of those brokerage firms I mentioned, you are going to have the checkbook. So I always draw the visual as picture yourself pulling a checkbook out of the back of your pocket, even though not too many people write checks anymore. You're pulling that checkbook out and you're making the investment, or you're doing the wire transfer for the investment. Here's the other thing too, TJ, is with the self-directed IRA and when they have their funds parked with the custodian, and you guys know this, first of all, you're probably going to be waiting a period of time. And in fairness to the custodians, even when they do things quick, it's not the same day, it's not the next day, it's going to be a matter of time, but you're also paying the fees associated with that. So without getting into, companies as far as IRA custodians, et cetera, typically with the 401k, you're actually going to save money as well, because you're not paying those custodian fees every year. And here's the one thing that most IRA custodians they acknowledge, and you'll disclaim this as part of your signature on the application. They'll do their best to make sure you're not violating an IRS, what's called prohibited transaction rule, but they're not legally responsible for an investment that is a prohibited transaction. They're going to do their best to help you, but if you did something wrong, they're still going to come back, and their attorneys are still going to come back and say, it's still your direction. You told us to do this. And so that's, because I tell people is if an IRA custodian was saying, we'll make sure that you never violate an IRS rule, well, maybe it's worth the extra money. Maybe it's worth not having checkbook control. But at the end of the day, you're probably not going to have that peace of mind either. So I just tell folks, between cost savings, the convenience of having control of that checkbook, so to speak, you might as well just do it yourself.
No, absolutely.
Are there prohibited transactions in a 401k, a solo K, much like the self-directed IRAs?
Absolutely. I mean, prohibited transactions are prohibited transactions that apply to all retirement plans. So you don't get away from the prohibited transactions, but we'll probably talk about this later. But one of the other features of the 401k plan too is the penalty structure, even if somebody inadvertently broke a rule and was somehow detected by the IRS and somehow went through the whole process with the IRS. The penalty structure for an individual 401k plan is much less arduous than it is for an IRA.
And that's a huge sales point for the product, for how it gets set up with you guys, where you're not insulated going through an IRA company from accidentally having prohibited transactions happen. So you already have the liability yourself anyhow. You might as well have the extra protection of what we're going to talk about later down the road on the 401k aspect of it.
Absolutely. I mean, it also kind of brings up another point. We were talking about IRS reporting. IRS reporting is different between a self-directed IRA and a 401k or solo K. How are they different?
Right. So with an IRA, the IRA custodian has to report those values every year to the IRS. And so it's just another layer of paperwork. With the 401k, now this is making the assumption that a plan might be under $250,000. With a 401k plan, there is no annual reporting on the 401k unless the assets surpass $250,000 for the year.
Got it. Okay. So you're not necessarily having to report what the current value is, the same as the self-directed IRA. And I mean, what's the benefit to that? You're not paying taxes on the value of it. You're paying taxes on whatever you keep or pay yourself out of the accounts.
Yeah, I'm going to give you one valid reason and then what I would consider one kind of invalid reason. But let's face it, people are human. So for the invalid reason, it's still something that people think about. The valid thing that's nice about not having an annual reporting is, and you and I had talked about this, Kelly, is it does kind of surprise me that the IRS does not even require on an individual 401k plan for that trustee to report the value, the fair market value of the 401k, unless the fair market value is determined to be more than $250,000. I mean, who would ever think that the IRS wouldn't even require you to send in anything? Because I would think most people would still say, hey, $250,000 still is a lot of money.
Yeah.
So that's a nice benefit. You just don't have to worry about it if your value is under the 250. Now, here's kind of the invalid reason. You know, I will have clients who will say, gosh, I don't even know if I want to go over the 250 because then I have to send in this, you know, what's called a 5500 easy. I have to send that into the IRS. I'm going to be on their radar. I'm like, well, you know, I don't really buy that per se, but I understand it. But what I would just tell somebody is, I'm surprised they're not requiring you to do it on 25,000.
Right.
So the fact that they're giving you up to 250,000 before you even have to report.
So no one rat all of us out to the IRS because we don't want to have additional paperwork.
Well, first of all, the term rat is a bit of a, you know, we can't use the word rat anymore in conversation. So.
Yes, we can. Do not tell. Snitches get stitches.
Is that what it is? Is that what it is?
IRS stitches.
No. So again, the huge benefits.
So it's up to $250,000 for your 401k, self-directed, no matter the value they're having to report to it, which kind of leads me into another point, not only just the values of them, but how much you can contribute. The self-directed IRA, you have caps, especially for our ages. I mean, we're old, but we're not that old yet. Where a 401k has a much larger gap. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, that's huge. And I'm going to use the example, if TJ doesn't mind, of his father, who we just set up a 401k plan. And I'm kind of divulging your age a little bit, TJ.
Me?
But believe it or not.
Oh, I'm old as hell.
TJ's dad is over 50. So the IRS.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. The IRS has a breakdown on the 401ks between under 50 and over 50. So that's why I made that bad joke. But with the IRA, if you're under 50, you can put in a whopping $6,000. If you're over 50, they're nice. They allow you to throw in an additional $1,000.
$500.
So $7,000.
You can actually do up to $7,000.
Wow.
So now with the 401k, it's all tied back to qualifying income, of course. But you can potentially, under the age of 50, put in currently for 2019 up to $56,000. And if you're over 50, they have what's called a catch-up provision, get you closer to retirement, where you can put in an additional $6,000 or $62,000. So even when you and I were talking the other day, Kelly,
can I borrow some money?
Kelly? Someone's just borrowed it from me. I don't have it.
But even like you and I were talking the other day, Kelly, is even if a self-employed individual, full or part-time, was putting in $20,000, well, is $20,000 better than, you know, $6,000 or $7,000? Right. Sure, you know. And there's all the other benefits of the 401k as well. But yeah, for people who are trying to put away money, it's not even a comparison between the IRA and the 401k.
So tell me so we're talking about, we're clearly younger than 50. I'm a little surprised you are.
A little bit.
We're younger than 50. We're self-employed. We're trying to, these are not tied to the markets. So if we put money in there and do nothing with it, it won't gain in value other than the interest of the account you're at. So at Wells Fargo, it's like 0.00002.
Yeah, that's awesome. How do I get those rates from you when I'm borrowing money on hard monies?
Oh my gosh. So the perk is you've got to use that money. In our industry, people lend the money out in order to grow that money. Are there different rules and regulations for the 401k? Like the self-directed IRA has a number of, we talked about prohibitive transactions, but can you tell us a little bit about the easier way to do that with the 401k?
Well, with regard to the prohibited transactions, and I'm doing a real broad blanket statement here.
Oh, we love broad. Then we feel like we understand.
Yeah. Break it down so it's easy for us. We're not too smart up here.
There's really three things you stay away from. You stay away from investing into disqualified assets. Okay. What are they? Here's one thing I like about the IRS on this topic. they don't give you a list of everything you can invest in. What they tell you is what you can't invest in.
Okay.
So with with an IRA, it's pretty easy. It's life insurance contracts and collectibles. Bottom line, you just cannot invest into those types of assets. With a 401k, technically you can invest into life insurance contracts as long as the plan documents are written to permit that.
Okay.
Most of my clients don't have an interest in that, so I'm usually not adding that to the plan documents. And then, similar to the IRA, they can invest in collectibles. The next area is what's called disqualified individuals. You want to stay away from people that the IRS calls bloodline ascendants or descendants to you, disqualified individuals. So I always will tell somebody, think of a visual of a horizontal and a vertical plane crossing each other. And I'm going to pick on TJ for this one. TJ is married, he has a spouse. Let's just say for right now, his spouse isn't even part of his business. He's got, the 2.5 kids at home. He's got, parent, grandparent, etc. that may still be, alive and doing their thing. What I just tell folks is those people that I just mentioned are all disqualified individuals to TJ's plan. He just wants to stay away from doing any investments with, through, or for their benefit or his benefit, because it can only lead to potential problems. Now, saying that, it doesn't mean that there's never anything that can potentially be done. But I like to be more on the conservative side. So what I'll usually tell my clients is, you stay away from those folks, you're going to be okay as far as the disqualified individual rules. People on the horizontal plane, that can be brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, nephew, nieces, friends, strangers, business associates. Those are all people by definition that are not disqualified. They will only become disqualified if you do something else that's maybe not correct to do, where it changes their status now into a disqualified individual. But by definition, they are not a disqualified person. So if TJ said, hey, John, loan my business $50,000, I can loan his business $50,000 if I want to do that. Like you and I spoke the other day,
I'll
Kelly.
email you some paperwork this afternoon. We'll get that wrapped up.
Yeah, exactly. If I had a McDonald's franchise here in Arizona and I said, hey, loan me $50,000 and you're going to be investing into my McDonald's, by definition, there's nothing wrong with that because you and I are not disqualified people to each other. And then the third concept is what's just called self-dealing. The simplest explanation is you're the financial steward of your plan. You're the fiduciary. You have that legal responsibility to do what's right for the plan. So one of the things the IRS and the Department of Labor says is, okay, that's fine, but you cannot be personally benefiting from it. Well, now somebody who's a smart aleck will say, hey, if I'm doing a really good job in investing and I take my $100,000 and turn it into $500,000, I'm benefiting myself. Well, duh, we all know that. But what the IRS is really referring to is transactionally wise. You can't, an example I will use is you can't be a real estate agent and go use your 401k or your IRA funds to purchase a property for the plan and then get paid a commission. Mm-hmm. You're personally benefiting. Now, one of the things I said is you can't benefit the plan either. So let's use a quick example of that. Most people don't know that their IRA or their 401k can actually assume debt, can actually take on a mortgage, for example. So I'll use an example of somebody from many, many years ago who was one of my first clients. He said, hey, John, I'm going to call you when I do my first investment. And by the way, I had warned him about this and told him he couldn't do this. So I had myself covered. But he calls me back like 4 months later and he goes, hey, this was even easier than what you told me. And I go, well, that's great. What'd you do? He goes, well, I went out and bought a property. And I go, oh, that sounds good. What'd you get? Like a, single unit, duplex, what'd you get? So he was telling me, and I said, so I'm glad. Hey, I'm glad it went well for you. And he goes, oh, John, it was so easy. I just went to the bank, filled out the paperwork for the loan. And on my end, my ears are kind of perking up a little bit. And I'm like, loan? He goes, yeah. You told me my 401k could borrow money. Yes, but there's a but. And this is where it gets back to benefiting the plan. In his case, he actually co-signed the loan as a person. As a personal guarantor? As a personal guarantee. Okay. You can't do that because you're providing a benefit now to your retirement plan, and you have to keep that arm's length transaction status from the plan. So that's when people say, well, how would I ever benefit a plan? That's a great example of how somebody might benefit a plan by co-signing on a loan that the plan has.
I think maybe one of the easiest ways to kind of understand your fiduciary responsibility to the plan is think of it as if you were managing a retirement account fund for a company. You just happen to own the company, and the retirement account assets happen to be yours, eventually when you pull them back out again. And I think when you understand it kind of from that perspective, it really puts a different spin on, well, what's right to do and what's not right to do and what's legal to do and what's not legal to do. And then obviously call you if there's a question about, hey, I kind of want to do this. What do you think?
Yep. And there's so many good, as you guys know, there's so many good investment opportunities out there. They don't have to play games. No. First of all, it's the law. There's no reason to get in trouble with the IRS. So, but otherwise you don't need to go that route. Just keep your nose clean, do what the IRS expects you to do, and you'll be happy.
So let's give an example of that. I want to go buy a property with using my 401k. How should I go about it appropriately?
Well, there's a couple different structures, but we're going to use the path of least resistance. Kelly has a 401k plan, and her account is set up at Wells Fargo, and it's called, for lack of better terminology for right now, it's called the Kelly Smith 401k Plan and Trust.
Wow, you got
so
creative.
Now
man.
Kelly finds that property, and she's interested in that. She is going to, whether it's a wire transfer or writing a check, what the titling is going to be the plan. Now, some title companies, they may say, well, we need your name first as trustee, or we need your name somewhere on there as trustee. That's fine. I just tell people you want to clearly show that you're not the owner. If your name is listed on it, it's only listing you as the trustee of the plan, not that you're the actual owner of it. So the property would just be owned by, Kelly Smith, 401k Plan and Trust, Kelly Smith as trustee. We also have another structure that if people are specifically interested in property and they've talked to an attorney and their attorney says, hey, we want to try to create as much of a wrapper of asset protection as possible for that piece of property that your plan now owns, we can actually set up an LLC structure for the plan that is owned by the 401k. So now that person can actually take their LLC and go out and make that investment on behalf of their 401k plan. So in that case, if Kelly had ABC LLC that was owned by her 401k and she goes out and buys the property, now as the manager of ABC LLC, which again is owned by the 401k plan, she could then go out and buy that property. It would just now be titled in the name of the LLC, which again is owned by the 401k. And there's a lot of reasons, not only the legal reasons, but I'll get the occasional person who will say, hey, I don't want somebody making out a rent check payable to my 401k plan. Well, that's fine. I mean, there's nothing illegal or wrong with that, but I get that somebody may not want a rent check made payable to their 401k plan. So that would even be an additional reason why I might suggest to somebody, if they wanted to, is, we can always create that LLC structure for the investments you make with some of your 401k funds.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. So would you recommend people be a sole proprietor or an LLC if they were going to be purchasing properties using their 401k?
Well, you mean for the plan?
Right.
If they're going to buy properties, I would generally take the position that it would probably be a strong consideration.
Asterisk.
I would generally say if they know they're going to go out and buy property, it's not only a bad idea. It's not a bad idea to not only get one LLC, but possibly more than one LLC, depending on if they're doing multiple properties.
Right.
And that's a legal protection issue, not so much a financial tax protection issue, or obscuring the owner of the asset kind of issue.
Yeah, and of course, one of the obvious answers too is somebody would say, well, can I just get an umbrella policy, on the property for $1 million, which should cover any kind of liability claim that might arise? And sure, but I think most attorneys would probably say if you're going to buy a property, it's probably good to have an LLC. Like, I'll give you a good example of a recent person I have on the IRA side, where we set up an IRA LLC structure. He was going to go right out and buy 3 properties. He already had them identified, and he said, I didn't even ask him. He just came back and he just said, John, I want 3 different LLCs for my IRA, because each one's going to hold its own property. I'm like, not a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what if I was going to loan money? Because that's how most people use their self-directed or their retirement accounts. Because you can't give it it's got to be an arm's length transaction, so they end up lending it out as private money lenders. Would you say that same thing, run that through an LLC, or do you think it's fine running it through the 401k where I'm the bank?
I think you're fine running that through the 401k. I think what any attorney would probably say is, what is your exposure to liability? If the exposure is considered maybe too much of a risk to take, set up the LLC. Yeah. If you don't consider it to be a risk, like, I'll give you a good example. There's a couple companies out there that are really pushing the LLC structure strong. Well, that's fine. I mean, PGI's been doing that ever since we've been in business, which is 2007. But again, I would come back to somebody before I'm quote unquote pushing that to them is if you're investing in something that either has no risk or virtually no risk, why do you need an LLC just to make the investment?
And you mean risk? You mean risk from a liability perspective on the investment itself, not risk on maybe the investment can go down in value. So in other words, you get a trip and fall on your rental property. There's your liability aspect on that property. And like you said, a blanket policy of $1 million is probably going to cover you anyhow. But the extra layer of LLC protection is a benefit in that case.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
Well, that's easy enough. I guess, so we've been talking about ages, monies, how much you can put in legally with your age and whatnot. What is the typical avatar of someone who is most benefited by a self-directed IRA versus the avatar of a person most benefited by a solo K 401k?
Boy, you know what I'm going to say because I'm biased on this. And by the way, PGI sets up self-directed IRAs and 401ks, so there's no selfish interest because we do both. But without question, I mean, obviously, if somebody's strictly a W-2 and they have funds they want to self-direct, they have to do a self-directed IRA. They don't qualify for an individual 401k plan. If that person is a W-2 but also has a legitimate side business, that could be, you know, back, I'm showing my age here because I don't think they say this in college anymore, but if they were selling widgets on the side, well,
they said that when I was in college, so hopefully they still say it.
That was a long time ago, remember?
It was a while ago.
But they could set up a 401k plan for that if they're doing transactions through Amazon and they're selling through Amazon. Well, as long as it's not a hobby, that's a part-time business. Yeah. Bottom line is, as a general rule, and this is why I like to spend time talking with people on the phone versus them just calling and saying, hey, you know, where do I start? Because I want to make sure that I'm understanding their situation and they're understanding the rules and all that good stuff. But generally speaking, if somebody fits that box of either being a full-time self-employed person or a part-time self-employed person, I'm almost always going to suggest that they do the 401k.
And that's because you can put more money in, less restrictions, less costs.
More monies, less cost, take out loan provisions if you wanted to. We haven't talked about UDFI yet, but there's no UDFI on a properly structured 401k investment into leveraged real estate transactions. There's just a good 5, 6, 7 things I could come up with, you know, pretty much at the tip of my tongue or the tip of my nose, whatever the saying is, and you know, tell you why a 401k would be better than an IRA in most cases.
Well, actually, I'd like to hear more about that. We're going to take another quick commercial break. Y'all tune in, watch a little bit more about Propelio, the services they provide. If you've not tried Propelio before, they have a free month, and it's $98 a month outside of that, but it's your source for leadless. So your pre-foreclosures, your foreclosures, change in trustees, you can run real MLS comps, landing pages for We Buy Houses, Driving for Dollars app coming very soon. But check this out, this little commercial, and we'll be right back.
The Propelio Academy, an all-in-one education resource for training in wholesales, subject to wraps, short sales, flips, rentals, BRRRR, property management, and more. Go to propelio.com/academy to get your scholarship today. Propelio.com. What does Propelio offer? Lead generating websites, access to true MLS comps, off-market lead lists, and deal alerts. Get them all today at Propelio.com.
Welcome back to Pain and Gains, everyone. The best show in this time slot on Propelio TV. TJ Kosen, Kelly Smith. We got my buddy John here talking about IRAs and how to defer your tax liability and make a ton of money so you can retire on a beach with a umbrella in your Mai Tai, if you like Mai Tais. Thomas backstage likes Mai Tais. He's a big Mai Tai fan. He doesn't even like Scotch. He doesn't know what Scotch is. So, Kelly, what are we talking about? I forgot.
Well, we were talking about the benefits for most people if they are not a full-time W-2 employee, or really it sounds like even pushing above age 50, why a 401k or solo K would be better. More money can be put into it, up to $56,000. You have check writing abilities. You could take loans out on it. There's less restrictions, less fees. You're not running through the custodian. What else am I missing?
Well, I'm going to correct you on one thing.
Okay.
Just remember, first of all, I'm going to say anybody who's self-employed, full or part-time, should probably be doing the solo K, because regardless of your age, you're going to be able to put in a heck of a lot more money into a 401k structure than you ever can an IRA.
$6 grand versus 56 grand is significant.
Yeah, I would think so.
Exactly. So a couple of things we haven't talked about. One of the benefits too with the 401k is Roth. Now, for a cynic, they're going to say, well, I can do a Roth IRA. Yeah, you can. You're still going to be limited to that $6,000 or $7,000. So with the 401k, you have a couple different buckets of how you can put the funds in. And without getting too complicated right now, just know that number one is you have what's called an elective deferral limit, where you can put in based on your age, either 19,000 or up to 25,000 if you're over the age of 50. That can all be put in as Roth as long as your plan documents permit. And so as long as the client tells me they want that ability to have Roth contributions made to the plan, that's a huge benefit. But it even gets better. Our plan documents is, again, as long as the client tells me they want this added, can also have Roth conversions added. Where does that come into play? Let's say you guys are working with somebody and they have 500,000 of pre-tax funds, and they have it in their 401k or their IRA, it doesn't matter, but now we're talking about the 401k. And they say, you know what, I know it's going to be painful, but I'm willing to take that tax hit because anything I want moving forward, I want it to be tax-free. Well, plan documents that we create will actually allow them legally to convert those pre-tax funds to Roth. And then they have to pay Uncle Sam, obviously, his share of the taxes, but they can do it. So here's the difference. If Kelly had a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA, and she didn't want to convert the traditional funds to Roth, but she wants to self-direct both of those IRAs, what does she have to do? She has to create two IRAs because there are two different types of IRAs. With the 401k, you can have your pre-tax funds and your Roth funds all within one plan.
Oh, that's
now,
huge.
One quick warning, because this is something that just personally bugs me. There are some promoters out there that will give the impression of, hey, we have a Roth 401k. You can't believe how many calls I get from people who go, but do you have a Roth 401k? And I kind of start laughing and I just say, 401k is a 401k. It's just whether or not Roth provisions are permitted within the plan. But to answer your question, yes, we do. So some of the good marketers out there are basically saying, yeah, but you need to have a Roth 401k. Well, okay, you can.
So touch on that real quick about the contribution and the tax implications of the contribution. So there's the plan where you put in pre-tax money to the plan, and there's the plan where you put in post-tax money to the plan. And then just touch on the growth of both of those options and which one might be more beneficial.
Yeah, well, the obvious thing is either with an IRA or a 401k, anything that you can justify doing because you have to pay that tax, and you can do in Roth, yeah, you probably want to do Roth, because I just tell people, generally speaking, are taxes going to go down? No, they're probably going to go up. But again, they'd want to talk to their financial planner with that, because let's use an example, TJ. If I'm talking to somebody who's 30 and I'm not a financial planner and I don't sell them investments, am I really the best person to talk to them about whether they should convert to Roth or not? Probably not. But as someone at age 30, it's pretty easy. I'm just going to say, do you anticipate that taxes are going to go down by the time you're 60? Mm-hmm. Probably not. If I'm talking to somebody who's 62 years old and they say, should I do Roth? Well, now it becomes number crunching. Depending on what they're planning on doing for investments, it may be better for them. It may not be. Now, to get to the specifics of your question, there's really 2 or 3 buckets. I like to use the word buckets because I want people to have that visualization that they're putting money into a bucket and within a plan. One is what I kind of referenced earlier is the elective deferral. The elective deferral is what you're personally putting in from what your business is paying you, whether you're a sole proprietorship or an S Corp, C Corp, etc. That number is limited to $19,000 currently for under the age of 50, $25,000 for over the age of 50. But the other bucket, because what you guys should be saying is, well, wait, but you said like 56,000 or 62,000. So this is like 19 or 25. It's still nice, but where's the other 30-some thousand come into play? That's typically going to be put in as a profit sharing contribution. So profit sharing contribution is what is considered the profit sharing portion of the business that is made into the plan on the participant's behalf, so on TJ's behalf. So if TJ is knocking it out, of the ballpark and he's doing well with his business, he can personally elect to put in up to that $19,000 being under the age of 50. But then based on his qualifying income from his business, he can potentially put in, quick math, that'd be $37,000, another $37,000 in profit sharing contributions from his business. Benefit to the business is it gets a write-off. Even if he's a sole proprietor, he's able to write off that $37,000 contribution. If he's a C Corp or an S Corp, he's able to obviously take that off his business taxes as a company deduction for TJ's benefit. But that's where you get to the 56. Then, not to go to higher level college course here, but I'm also kind of a big proponent of what's called after-tax. I'm kind of a big proponent of after-tax contributions. Yeah. And Kelly and TJ may say, well, wait, Roth is after-tax, right? It's after-tax contributions, yes, but it's considered a Roth contribution. After-tax contributions is strictly where you're able to put in money out of your savings account, so to speak, and put it into the plan. You can't exceed the limits, of course, that the IRS has established, but you can actually put in after-tax contributions, which is different from Roth and probably a longer conversation than this podcast.
Sure. And then how does that after-tax contribution grow? Does that grow tax-free, tax-deferred? Yeah,
so let's just use the easy example on the pre-tax and the Roth. Anything you do on the Roth matter is going to be tax-free growth as long as you just follow the rules. Mm-hmm. So the best visual I can give your listeners is if they're making a $5,000 investment, that's Roth dollars, and that turns into $50,000 within a couple years. As long as they follow the rules from the IRS, that's all going to be tax-free.
So yeah, after you can take it back out again after you hit whatever the age is, then that $50K is tax-free. That's a huge benefit that a lot of people don't understand when they're setting this up.
Yeah, and here's the other thing, the sobering thing. Most people, let's be really, really honest, percentage-wise, most people, when they need the money the most, is going to be in their retirement years, and that's also when the IRS is going to tax them. Yeah. Because anytime they, with pre-tax funds, not Roth funds, with pre-tax. So is there huge benefits to using Roth dollars, after-tax dollars, et cetera? Yeah, if you're interested in having tax-free income in retirement years.
And if I can afford the tax hit now and I don't need the extra money, I can stick it in the account and then grow that account tax-free. If I don't, Absolutely. If I do need the money now, then I probably just better make more money and not plan for retirement yet.
And that's based off your adjusted gross income, not what your net income was.
Correct.
Or sorry, gross income, I mean.
Fantastic. Okay. Let's talk about the hugest benefit, well, not hugest, but one of the hugest benefits of the 401k versus an IRA. What happens when I screw up and I write myself, no, not even myself, I like my kid, I write my kid a check for $1 out of my 401k account. What happens?
TJ, that's a great question. I'm going to give you the example I use practically on every single phone call. And I'm going to change the numbers. No, we'll keep your dollar. We'll use your story.
Give your kid more than $1. She's cute.
It's like a tooth fairy dollar or something. What do teeth cost now? I don't know what teeth. What's the going rate on a tooth?
So TJ has an IRA. We're going to use the IRA. And I'm going to simplify it, not use the legalese language. I'm going to just kind of shoot straight. But TJ has $1 million in his IRA. He writes out a check for $1 to his daughter. And somehow the IRS finds out about it. The IRS comes back and they say, TJ, everything was fine except for this $1 that you wrote. And it's a prohibited transaction. And you go, kind of that visual of pulling the checkbook out of your back pocket. And you go, sorry, what do I owe? Mm-hmm. And they go, oh, you don't owe anything. And you kind of take that sigh of relief like, oh, okay, great. This is no big deal. And they go, actually, with the prohibited transaction and being under the age of 59 and a half, not only is your entire account distributed, but you also have a 10% penalty. And you go, I'm not really sure what you said, but that doesn't sound good. And so
that's a lot of math.
Basically, what they'd be telling you is that $1 million now, because you had that prohibited transaction for the $1, is technically considered distributed under the law, which means you would be taxed. Obviously, you'd be taxed at the highest tax bracket with $1 million. Mm-hmm. And because you're under the age of 59 and a half, you're also going to have a 10% penalty.
So you're going to get the tax rate at the time when the $1 transaction occurred, mm-hmm. not current time when they catch it.
Correct. Mm-hmm. It goes back to January 1st in the year in which the prohibited transaction occurred. Yes.
So I'm losing $100,000, 10%, and then I'm losing whatever my tax status is at that. So if I'm making $1 million a year, and then I do this $1 thing, then I now made $2 million that year. So all of the second $1 million is basically taxed at the highest tax rate, and more or less.
Yeah,
Plus
you've been hit hard.
I'm screwed.
By the tax man.
Yeah,
now,
that
how
hurts.
does that change with the 401k? Basically, now there's a provision. It has to be caught within the first year and reported within the first year. Otherwise, the penalty gets more. But basically, it's a cash amount on the amount that's involved in the transaction. 15% of the amount that's involved in the actual transaction that was considered to be prohibited. You don't have a 10% penalty regardless with the 401k. You still keep your 401k. It's not considered distributed. You just pay the penalty associated with that prohibited transaction.
So 15
Is
cents.
that a huge benefit?
So my
That's a
dollar,
huge benefit.
how much of my dollar am I losing in that case?
15 cents, right?
I'd probably it should be 15 cents, but I would say consult your CPA just to make sure.
Just to make sure. But a whole hell of a lot less than $200,000 to $300,000 on my $1 million.
He comes
Yes.
up with a different number. My math is bad.
Yes. Yeah, the visual that you want to have with that $1 million is going to be a lot less with the 401k than it ever would be with the IRA.
So here's the visual. 401k, IRA.
Yeah.
In terms of the tax implications for when you screw up, you might call it huge with a
And
Y.
you know what? When Kelly and I were even visiting the other day, I said, in some respects, I consider that there's the sales part of my job and the education part of my job. The education part is important, and this is, to me, one of the main reasons somebody should consider a 401k plan as long as they qualify, is this reason that we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you never know. I don't know all the rules.
No.
I'm sure there'll be some point down the road I give you a call. I'm about to do this, and you shake your head no.
Well, exactly. And we're not necessarily, we're professionals hopefully making money in whatever our business is, but we're not necessarily professionals in knowing what the rules are on this thing. So in the event that you screw up, if you're going 90 in a 25 zone, it doesn't matter that you didn't know it was a 25 zone. You're still getting a ticket, and you might get locked up. You're not going to get locked up for this. So if you screw up something from a prohibited transaction perspective and you didn't know that you were screwing up, it doesn't mean that you're not liable for what happened. And I think that's a huge...
Theoretically, who catches that screw up in the first year? Should it be my CPA, my tax professional? Do I send what I did to you this year with my 401k?
That's a great question.
Do I try to
Kelly,
hide it
in
and
this-
not tell anyone?
Yeah. I really should.
In this space, let's answer the last question first. Is companies in this space, we're what you would consider plan document providers. So we're not administering your plan. And the best visual I give somebody is, I'm not with you in Texas, looking over your shoulder and kind of making sure that what you're doing is correct. So it's not possible really for me to administer your plan when I'm not in that official role and I'm not charging you for that, etc. I'm also not a CPA or an attorney. So most of the companies in this space, they're not the CPA or the attorney. So what every company should be saying is, yeah, you should always review things with your tax or legal professional. One thing where I am a little bit different, and I like to kind of pat myself on the back with this, and it's not a criticism of other companies at all, because what they're actually doing is probably very correct, is we're all human beings. I would rather have somebody call me versus sticking their head in the sand and just thinking, I'm fine. By at least calling me, I can at least say, hey, I think this is totally okay. I think this is totally not okay. Or the answer might be, like I use the red, yellow, green light situation. It's a green light as far as I'm concerned. It's a red light as far as I'm concerned. Or, well, it could be a yellow. But either way, I'm always going to emphasize to the person is, I'm going to tell you what I think, and I'm conservative by nature. But you should never rely on what I'm telling you as tax or legal advice, because I don't have CPA or ATTY behind my name.
It's good advice.
Do you have any of those?
No.
What's behind your name?
Smith.
Smith. Well, fantastic. What's
the
next?
First. Well, we're getting towards the end, so do we want to go straight
let's
into
do
our
little
final five?
So these are for anyone that's tuning in now, and I don't imagine you've seen one of our shows before. We ask the same 5 questions to every guest that we have whenever we have the show. And well, they're great questions.
They're
so
good
anyone
questions.
that wants a
They're
sneak
nothing
peek, if you're going to be on the show, you can look at these 5 questions and pre-do your answers. Kelly and I make up our answers every week, so our answers, much like Whose Line Is It Anyway, don't actually matter. And that probably dates me because I don't even know if that show's on anymore.
Changes based on our moods.
It changes based on what we're thinking at the time. And we're going to do these 5 questions and see what we learn about each other.
If you were not, well, we say if not real estate, but if you were not in financial services world, not doing what you do, and money were no option, what would your dream job be?
If money was no option,
Yes.
I would probably be involved in some charitable entity where I'm still working, still keeping the blood flowing, but doing something where I feel like I'm actually contributing to somebody else if money's not an object.
Any kind of niche?
Any kind of charity? No, not necessarily, but probably something more with kids.
Oh,
Nice. What would you do?
honestly, I want to take a nap. And I would hire people to let other moms take naps, working moms with toddlers.
You know, that's probably a pretty good nonprofit.
I know
Just
your wife
hire people
would
to.
take-
Anyway, okay. Keep it to one. Keep it to one. But what is one thing you're not very good at?
Technology.
Oh.
I
you
make no
nailed
bones
today.
about that.
You did great.
Like even getting set up with you guys, it's like, wait, what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? So anything related to technology, my kids can't stand me because I'm usually the one saying, here, fix this. I don't know what to do. And my son, who actually works for PayPal in a pretty decent job, he's like, Dad, okay, I'm done with this. I'm not going to be your person who does all your work for
He
you.
cuts you off.
Yeah, my two daughters are too nice to say that to me, but my son's like, yeah, Dad, I'm not going to do this.
As
Figure it
I'm
out.
setting up a ring for my dad later.
Full disclosure on my part, my wife, a girlfriend at the time, had to help me set up my first iPhone when I moved from BlackBerry to iPhone 1,000 years ago.
Really?
So I have a certain sympathy for that particular
I'm pleasantly surprised by
technophobic
that.
dysfunction.
Yeah.
What is? Oh, it's your turn.
My wife just calls it laziness, by the way. So
Yeah,
well,
that's
you
true.
know.
Well, we pick our laziness the same as we pick our hearing ability at a certain age, I think.
Oh, absolutely. That's the perks of being old. So if you had a dream home, what would be the location and type? Again, money's no object.
well, okay, I have to be honest on this one. Deep down inside, my wife's probably going to run the show anyway. So if money was not an option, I can't say where I would necessarily go, but I'll say where she would want to go. If money was no option,
Sure.
she would want to have a retirement home close to where the kids are,
No.
or in the same, direct vicinity, and then a flat in Manhattan.
Okay.
Very nice.
I dig
So,
that. The
little-
big city.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
I think it's the first time we've had a
I don't think
big
we've had a
city
big like
in the
like a
States.
penthouse, right? Like something massive.
Well, just something where you can go and you have a place to lay your head. It doesn't have to be the fanciest place. But if money was no object, yes, then it would probably be a penthouse.
just
that
making
sounds
sure.
like when you're booking places for Vegas.
How much do you lose when you go to Vegas, Kelly?
I don't gamble.
You don't gamble. Ooh.
No, that's why we're having conversations about protecting money.
What's your house this
But
week?
that's what she likes, and so I'm going to try to keep it to what she likes.
So what you're saying is you have a very healthy marriage.
Well, sure, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Your question, yes, but we all know how relationships work, and my wife tends to run the rule the roost, and so that's okay.
Hey,
Kelly, what's your house this week?
That's a good question. I don't know. Part of me, so much want a vacation. I would love to be on a boat in the middle of somewhere cool. Turks and Caicos, Hawaii, I don't care.
That sounds like fun. So you want to live on a boat?
For now.
That's weird.
I
No
just
offense to
wanna
boat
get
livers.
away for a minute.
What is?
Breathe.
I like this one. What is one extravagant purchase you have made or would like to make? You don't have to rat yourself out if you have a Ferrari in the garage. You don't need to tell everyone.
Or the Bentley.
Yeah.
That was the first guest we asked had a Bentley and a Lamborghini.
Well, my wife comes from a large family, and unfortunately, one of the siblings has passed away, but she came from a family of 12. And so what I always wanted to do is get a place in, like maybe Hawaii, where for the week I pay for everybody to fly over, their hotel rooms, for the food, for the the golf. And the only rule is that at night we all have to have dinner together.
I love that.
Sounds really, really nice.
That's so
Sounds
nice.
like a lot of fun.
That's really nice.
Well, and
We've never had an answer that nice
and
before.
since money is no object, we're invited.
Oh, totally. We're
Yes.
coming.
Okay.
Well,
He doesn't have a
absolutely.
choice.
You guys are a family, right?
We are now.
Kelly, your favorite question?
If heaven or wherever you believe exists, what do you hope God or whomever you think is up there, what do you want them to say to you?
I want God or whoever that deity is to tell me that I was funnier than anybody in my family thought I was.
I can relate to that.
I can relate. Our whole family thinks we're funny.
We forgot our charity jar. That means
My
$1.
wife doesn't think I'm funny. My kids don't think I'm funny. But you know what? Every so often, I'm kind of funny.
Speaking of, have you used
fair.
any of the dad jokes out of the dad book I gave you?
Not yet. Well, she can't really understand them yet. She needs to
that's
get
true.
it. She had her first tooth come in yesterday, so she's cranky.
I feel
So she doesn't want any.
My problem
jokes.
with the dad jokes is I hear some of these jokes and they're like really funny, but then I forget them.
So then
Yeah, that
you're
happens.
having to back into the answer.
Yeah.
I've done that.
I would love to be able to say, hey, I have a couple dad jokes for you real quick, but it's like I can't remember them.
Maybe
I can tell you the punchline.
you got to
that made me laugh.
write them down, maybe. Write them down. I don't know.
You got a little tattoo on your arm.
And the jokes I tend to remember are the off-color ones, which wouldn't be good for a podcast anyway.
Maybe.
You clearly
that's
not
possible,
listened
Fran.
to us before.
So we'd absolutely like to thank you for coming on the show, 100%.
So,
And
John, let everybody know, how can they find you and get a hold of you?
yeah,
Oh, okay. So my name is John Park, P-A-R-K. Best number to reach me at is direct 602-684-2922. Email, I'll just spell it out real quick. It's John, John, at pgiselfdirected.com. And here's my only promise that I make to people, and I think you guys have sensed this with your interactions with me, is I spend time talking to people on the front end. So I'm not just, taking their order and, I want to talk to them, educate them, making sure I'm understanding their situation. And I will suggest to them what I think is their best consideration, their best option, regardless of whether it means, even if they're not a client with me, I'll suggest what I think is the best thing for them.
Yeah, I called you for one reason and got redirected to another, and then had a huge education session. So I would agree with that statement.
oh, absolutely. I'll say the same thing. Where in our conversations, you definitely just directed the conversation and talked about the different options. It was not such like some other companies where there's a product pushed or the company's best interest is for you to do this, so let's do this. So you really explained all the options and all the benefits and disadvantages to the different options. So I really appreciated that when I had a conversation with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you
TJ?
guys. Appreciate it.
What are you looking for, and how can people get a hold of you? Because we haven't been around a hot minute. People probably thought we got cans because we're terrible.
Well, it might happen next week. We'll see what happens. I'm looking for my 6th dumpster out in the Hoarder House. Please check it out on Facebook. So I think we're on dumpster number 5 today. We'll need dumpster number 6 probably tomorrow. And it's a great time. Please take a look at the video. We're going to actually be dropping that video on Propelio channel on Friday. A nice little production thing that Trey put together. It's going to be... It's a good thing y'all don't have smell-o-vision.
How much
I'm just going to put it that way.
of compacted trash do you think was in there too?
Well, here's the problem with trash, right? Because it's compacted when it's inside, and then when you start to move it out, then it's uncompacted. So it expands. It expands like your IRA account should expand if you're investing not in this house. You should invest in a different house. This is a not good house. Anyway.
It's a great house because you bought it right.
And that's the important part. We're going to talk about that on the show later, too. No, we're always, TJ Kosen, thanks for watching the Propelio show. Always looking for more deals, always looking for people to bring us deals, partner with us, or join the team to help find deals. And what do we bring to the table? We bring a lot of experience, enough experience to know how to buy a hoarder house right, and enough Facebook views to talk about it when we're doing it and be grossed out along the way.
And
So
they can find you in Platinum
you can
Real
find me
Estate.
Platinum Real Estate Mastermind on Facebook. Obviously, Kelly and I are both tagged on this video. If you Facebook friend me, my cell phone number's on there. Don't abuse the privilege, but I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
Or I'll give it
And
to
Kelly, it's been so long. I feel like I barely know you. What the hell are you doing here?
Good question. Good question. Well, I'm Kelly Smith with Easy Street Capital. I'm a hard money lender, so I'm financing your fix and flips, your new builds, transactional funding. Our Easy Rent program's on hold at the moment, but coming back very soon. So if you need any assistance with your short-term investment loans, I am here to help you and answer any questions.
Do you loan on hoarder houses?
We do. We do. We've lent on a couple houses with you. One we're going to be going to talk to
Not
or
this
go
one.
visit.
The hoarder house? Not this
Not
one.
the hoarder house,
well.
but the other one.
Can't have it all.
But you can always find me. My information is all over the internet, 512-417-2348. I have a big presence on LinkedIn as well as Facebook. Feel free to check me out, check out our reviews. If I can help you with anything, let us know. Otherwise, we're back. We took the month of July off, so we're really glad to be back with you all. We've got some great guests coming up, but check us out on our new time. We used to be Fridays. Now we are Thursdays at 11.
11 what?
Prime time, baby.
AM?
Central Standard Time,
Texas time?
AM.
Texas time?
Yes.
Only time that matters? Thanks so much for being on the show.
Hey, I have a question for you guys.
Oh, yeah.
You don't even have to try to answer it today. You can do it on a future podcast. What's the difference between CST and CDT?
Standard time and
Central domestic time.
CS.
Well, it's daylight time.
Yeah, daylight time versus standard time,
on your next
right?
podcast, answer that, because I'm not sure I fully know the difference. That was kind of random.
like an
I
hour,
know,
isn't
Who
it?
do you ask
An
for
hour?
that? Was that Roosevelt?
Google? Can we Google it?
We can
Yeah. Why do we do it? I think
Google
it was
everything.
I think it was a depression thing.
Yeah.
Man, we're gonna talk about this all. We'll just look it up. We'll save everyone some headache.
Dad, any help? You're wise.
Hey, TJ, you just said something like my son would say. I'll ask him a question. He'll just say, "Dad, have you heard of Google?"
Google it.
Yeah. Why don't you use it?
It works usually. I mean, it kind of gives you the answer you want.
My dad said, "Do we need an answer or the right answer?"
All right. Thanks for
That's
joining.
the perk of being the dad.
Thanks for joining us, y'all. Thanks for coming on, John. We really appreciate
Thank you
you
so
being
much,
here.
John. We appreciate your
Thank you,
time. We
guys.
appreciate all
Appreciate
of you.
it.
We'll be back.
Bye.
Propelio TV is sponsored by Noble Mortgage and Investments, Batch Skip Tracing, Think Multifamily, CreativeCashflow.com, and Life and Air.
Want to keep up with the latest Propelio TV daily? Be sure to subscribe and click that bell.